Hey guys, I'm Coach Joel, and this is part two. And now today, we are covering arguably the most important subject of the entire course. Today, we're going to go over bankroll management and session management. And in my opinion, if you don't get this right, basically none of the strategy stuff or the technical stuff that comes after this is going to matter. Frankly, it's all about managing your money, playing in stakes that you can afford to lose. And to highlight this, I'm actually not going to use any slides today. I'm not going to use visuals. I'm not going to use Flopzilla. I'm really not going to use anything. I'm just going to kind of speak to you more or less from the heart, from an experience, and from somebody who has observed the variance involved in poker. I've seen kind of the ups and the downs of it, and just want to set proper expectations for people who are really itching to go. They're itching to move up in stakes and play in the highest games, and they want to get there. They want to be there yesterday, basically, and they're very eager. And to that, I would say, that's great. Channel that enthusiasm into working on your game, moving slowly and patiently, and really managing your bankroll. Because at the end of the day, even winning poker players, people who have, really mastered a lot of the technical skills involved in this game, have done, extensive study, have put in a lot of long hours involving winning and losing and, really learning from those experiences. Those players still tend to lose 1/3 of their sessions. And let that sink in for a second. So basically, about 1/3 of the time that an excellent poker player shows up, um, he is probably going to lose money, and there's not much he can do about it on that day. On that day, it is his job to minimize losses and to make the best decisions possible, even though the cards are working against him. So it's a very tough hobby. It's an even tougher profession when you can show up to your job and you can come home a lot poorer than you were the day before. Now, that's not to say you can't make significant money playing poker. You absolutely can, but that money is made over the long term. It's not made on any given night. On any given night, the reality is anything can happen. You can have a losing session. You can have a down day where you may even play great that day. You may get the money in every single time as a favorite. And, getting the money in as a 70% favorite against a 30%, underdog is a great spot in poker. You can easily, there's a 9% chance that you lose two of those back to back. And when that happens, you're down significant money. And, it doesn't take that much poker to reach a 9%, occurrence. It's the type of thing that can happen quite frequently. So what does all of this have to do with bankroll management? It sounds like I'm being a bit of a downer. And, as much as I love poker, I really want to mentally prepare people for kind of the challenges that are ahead so they can properly prepare. And what that means for bankroll management is that you're never on any given one night putting yourself in a situation where the worst case scenario will crush you or crush your bankroll. You're never putting yourself in that spot. And the way that you do it is through a number of different things. Number one, just recognizing the variance that's involved in poker, like I just discussed, realizing that even if you're a big favorite in the game, even if you're an excellent player who has great technical mastery, that means that you're getting the money in as a 70 or an 80% favorite consistently. That does not guarantee that you're going to win that hand. You may even lose a series of hands like that. And, that's talking about people who have truly mastered the game. That's, for people that are just learning, their variance may be even more than that because they're making mistakes too. And, mistakes are fine. It's part of the process. You have to learn from it, but you have to put yourself in spots where you can afford to make those mistakes. And the way you do this is you start by deciding on how much money do I have to allocate to poker outside of my normal life expenses. And you put that into your poker bankroll. And this is going to vary for everybody. A professional player is going to need a much bigger bankroll because they're going to be playing, very frequently, and this is their sole source of or main source of income. For somebody who is doing this as more of a hobby, which I would, assume most players watching this video would be, it requires a certain degree of intentionality and foresight right at the start of playing. And I think it's, take an example where that for the year you have $15,000 to set aside for poker playing. And as soon as that money runs out, you're basically done playing poker for the year. Your hobby is over. So we we don't want to let it get to that point. What we want to do is to first off determine, are we going to be playing cash games, or are we going to be playing tournaments, or some mix of the two? And the thing to realize is with tournaments, we can't really count on that money necessarily returning a profit. A lot of the times, tournaments are very big fields. The most likely outcome is unfortunately that you do lose your buy-in. I mean, there'll be some great scores in between if you can, get in enough events, if you can be fortunate enough to have a day of great run good. But at the end of the day, we really cannot count on that money giving us, that much of a return on any given day. So say, you wanted to put 15,000 aside, like I was saying in this example, and you wanted to play in two really big tournaments, and those tournaments combined were, $2,500. Okay. So in this spot, you're saying that I can afford to lose this 2,500. I'm shot taking it. You are a bit overextended, and it may not be something that I'd necessarily recommend. I might say, can you play in a series of smaller tournaments in order to kind of reduce some of that variance? Because reality is a lot of tournaments do come down to some coin flips, and those blinds go up, and you have to make moves with some marginal hands, and sometimes your eights are all in against ace king, and your whole day of work comes down to that. So the reality is tournaments require more buy-ins in order to reach your end goal, in order to reach the long run, because there's so much short-term variance. So, but say there are two World Series of Poker events you're dying to play in, you can afford to lose the money, it's about the experience as much as making money. Okay, I get it. So from there, you would reduce the 15,000 down to 12,500. And then say you wanted to allocate the rest of that money to cash games. And it's really important, I think, to have at least 25 buy-ins if you're going to be a live cash game player. That amount is going to go up significantly if you're going to be playing online, because online involves more variance. We'll get to that in a second. But for live cash games, what you'll want to do is, because in the spot, you can divide it by 25, you'll have $500 buy-ins. And that's how you would determine the maximum stakes that you can play in. And so, most of the time people buy in for roughly 100 times the big blind. So it could be that you can afford to play in, a 2-5 game, $500 stacks, and you have 25 buy-ins. And then you would want to set a 3 buy-in stop loss for yourself, so that in any given session, you can only lose, 3 of those 25 buy-ins. That allows you to have a handful of nights like I described, where, the cards just are totally working against you, and you can still survive those nights. The rest of your bankroll's intact, and the nights where, things play more accordingly to the math, the nights where your edge shines through more, will save you on those nights. But if you had only allocated, 3 to 5 or even 9 buy-ins to your given stake level, you could easily have 2 or 3 of those really bad nights. All of a sudden, your bankroll is depleted. You can't do your hobby anymore. It's just not a situation we want to be in. So we want to be picking a stakes level where we can afford 25 buy-ins. But that's, in my opinion, that's only the maximum stakes that you should be playing in. It may be that your skills, while you can afford it financially, your skills actually aren't quite ready for that level. So it never hurts to be too conservative. and to slowly move up to make sure you're a winner at the previous level stakes before moving up to the bigger games. And those bigger games will always, they'll still be there. It's a few months later, they're still going to be there. And the biggest question is, what shape is your bankroll going to be in by the time you reach those? Are you going to feel overextended? Are you going to feel like, on a given night, I have to win? Or if I don't win, I'm going to have to drop down? I mean, most people, when they have this mentality, they can't play their best game. There's just too much pressure on any given hand. And a lot of edges in poker come from kind of exploring some high variance creative spots that maybe your opponents wouldn't think of. And if you are in a mindset of like, I have to win, I have to have a sure thing, you're not going to be able to find those edges and you're not going to be in a good mind space. So super important that you have enough buy-ins. You're not overextended on any given one night. You've proven to yourself that you're a winner at previous stakes before moving up. And then by the time you get to those, higher stakes, you're ready. You are sufficiently rolled for, you can withstand some of these storms that poker will throw at you when things don't go your way. And ultimately, your talent will shine through. And, planning in this way is how you ensure that poker is a net positive in your life. And you do that by, properly planning and really having good habits with your finances. So another thing is, you may want to shot take, and shot take is when you try to play in a bigger game. Maybe, you can't quite afford that game, but you really want to get a taste of how it plays. You want to, grow as a player. And I understand that that's part of the process. If you do decide to go down that road, you need to make sure that, again, anything that happens in that one night of shot taking cannot be, cannot ruin your bankroll and can't be something that you won't be able to reverse with a little bit more of playing at your current stakes. So a good recommendation, a good rule of thumb is that you won't lose more than 2 buy-ins at one stake higher than you're playing in right now. If you really should never be shot taking, more than 1 stake ahead of what you're playing in. If you're 2 or 3 stakes ahead, it's just too much money in a given night. On any one hand, things can go horribly wrong, and it can take a lot of time to make back that money at your current stakes. And most people don't play their A game when they have to go back and grind their current level and make back money that they already had. So you want to make sure that the amount that you're losing is an amount that you can win back, relatively easily. I would say again, 2 buy-ins at a higher level will allow you to feel out that game. You have a very clear stop loss in mind. If you lose, you go back down to your lower level, you make back the money, you think about some of the things that you learned, and then you can go back up again and try again. But you have very clear kind of guardrails around the worst case scenario of what can happen to you on a given night. So the other thing involved not in just bankroll management is also session management. And session management will change, in my opinion, based on whether you're playing live or you're playing online, because the key difference is there are just so many more hands that you're playing when you're playing online. So online, you may get as many as 100 hands an hour, maybe even more than that. You're multi-tabling. So it's just so many more decisions, and it's a lot more tiring. Live, it may be only 25 or 30 hands an hour. And again, you're folding a lot of those. So a lot of live is, sitting and it's social. You're talking to people, you're paying attention, but like you're not racking your brain as hard as you are online. And so with online, it's even more important that you you really keep track of how long your session is going, that you're not running past your breaking point, and you have a really good idea of at what point in my session do my results begin to taper off. And the way that you do this I mean, you can hire a private coach. A lot of coaches that are willing to look at your results, tell you exactly what that point is. We can review your data and help you make the decision for yourself. The other way is to keep your own records and to do the analysis yourself. And to know that, okay, when I play 4 hours of online poker, I'm a winning player. But when I go beyond that, fatigue, tilt, lack of focus, all these things start to set in, and I'm no longer a winner in my game anymore. So, really important to be a successful poker player is to just have that self knowledge about yourself. It's not, um, ultimately, it's not about being able to play, longer than anybody else. It's not a marathon. It's much more about playing at your best for however long that is. I had a client who would play live, and he would play, sometimes he would play 13-hour sessions. And I would look at his results and see that he was a great winning player through 6 hours. And if he just quit right at the 6 hour mark, he'd be one of the best players in the game. But he would go on to play past that point. And at that point, he was actively losing money. He would lose, some, if not all of the money he had made in those remaining hours. And, it's just crazy to think about. I mean, compare this to a job. I mean, can you imagine a job, a 9 to 5, where you choose to work overtime, and in that overtime, you're losing the money that you made in the first 8 hours? I mean, let that sink in. It's insanity. So you really need to know that you're actively losing money in that remaining time, and that you're not at your best, and have a very clear idea in mind of when am I going to quit, um, you know, regardless of how my session's going. And maybe your rule is for live, I would say it's maybe you can play 6 hour sessions. For online, maybe it's shorter, maybe it's more like 4 hours, and maybe it's give or take. Maybe you give yourself some wiggle room. You give yourself plus or minus 1 hour, depending on the game that you're in, how you're feeling that day, how you're playing that day. But you never give yourself more than that. You have those firm guardrails around, so there's a little discretion, but not too much where you can get yourself into trouble. And doing this will help you manage your sessions. Again, having that three buy-in stop loss is going to be super important. I think that's important for online as well as live. For online, I mean, I had mentioned 25 buy-ins for live. I think for online, if you're going to be playing frequently cash games, you may need as many as 100 buy-ins. And that's for a lot of reasons. The game just plays faster. There's a lot more bluffing. There's a lot more three betting. There's just higher variance involved in online. Not to mention if you're playing multiple tables and playing more hands per hour. I mean, you can see how all of these things can compound your experience online. And then you throw in the fact that you don't have live reads. And so you're playing and making all of these decisions quickly with less information, and presumably against better players, because online poker tends to be more competitive than live. So for all of these reasons, you're going to need a bigger bankroll to play online. So if you took that same example before, where you had $12,500 and that money needed to go into an online bankroll, I'd recommend that you're not playing, more than $125 buy-ins. You're finding a stakes where that's the most you would ever put in. I mean, I'd be even more conservative, and at most you're playing 50 cents, $1. If like financially, that's what you play, but you're not going to. I mean, you may want to play much lower than that and work up to it and make sure that you're a winning player. So this journey is all about knowing yourself, being realistic about your own abilities versus the competition, managing your finances, managing your emotions and your time within a session, and doing all of that. If you have that as your baseline, that will allow you to be successful at the strategy level. And we're going to talk a lot more about, tons of, in the remaining 28 videos, it's going to be a lot more discussion on the specific strategies, what you should be doing in all these different spots. But the reality is that discussion is only helpful if you're already doing this. You're already managing your money. You're already playing in games where you can afford to lose the money involved in those games from time to time. That's just a part of poker. And my recommendation is, if you're not doing that and you don't plan on doing that, I don't think that the remaining videos will be helpful, because this step is so fundamental and ensures that poker is a healthy activity in your life. So I hope you liked it. This is, definitely the most important part of poker. It's, simple money management, planning, making sure you're in the right stakes. And ultimately, this is what's going to ensure your survival as a poker player long term, so that, no one night of some random guy jamming his money in with a gut shot where he hits can break you. Everyone's seen the Rounders scene. I mean, this is different. This is not a drunken person in Rounders. This is, KGB with the full house over full house, and coolers happen like that. And it obviously takes a devastating toll on the main character, and he has to do all these different things to work his way back up. And we just want people that have subscribed to be able to get there gradually and never put themselves in a spot where those worst case scenarios can really derail them. Thanks again. Talk to you soon, and looking forward to diving into more things related to strategy in the upcoming videos.